Hello and welcome to another Flutter tutorial. In this video, we will see what are wrap widgets and where to use it. We will also learn what are chip widgets and different type of chip widgets like action, input, filter and choice chips. Okay, so let's start. This is my main.dart file where I have set an empty container as home. Now I'm going to create a new file, wrap widget demo.dart. And let's create a stateful widget in this class. So wrap widget demo extends stateful widget, a title, and override the create state. So let's create the state class. So we need to override the init state method and the build method. So the create state should return the state object. Now let's create the UI. So a scaffold with a key. Let's create a global key. So I'll be using this key later to show a stack bar. So let's initialize the key. So that will be a new global key. Alright, and an app bar with a title, widget.title. Okay. Now the body with a color widget. Okay, now let's create a new function, row, that will return a row widget, and we will be adding some chip widgets to it. Okay, so a new function, widget, let's say chip for row, that will accept a string label and a color. We will return a chip widget from this function. So chip, and let's add the label padding 5.0 and the avatar, a circle avatar with the background color. Let's set it to gray dot shade 600 and a child which is a text widget. Let me set it to AB. Later we will change that, and the label will be the parameter label with a style, new text style, color, colors.white. Okay. Alright, now let's set the other properties. A background color, so which is the incoming color. You can set the elevation as well, and the shadow color. If you go inside the chip widget class, you can see all the properties which you can set. Okay, let's set some padding as well. Okay, so once that is done, we can add this widget to the row widget. So that will be chip for row. So let me set the label to, let's say, health, and a color code. So let me copy that and duplicate and set the labels to food, lifestyle, sports and nature. We'll also change the colors as well. Okay, so those are different colors. Let me change the function name to row chips. Okay, and add it to the UI. Okay, now let's go back to the main.dart file and import the wrap widget demo.dart file and replace the home with wrap widget demo. Okay, so the chips are showing in the UI now, but some of the chips are truncated, right? So before fixing that, let's fix the spacing between the chips first. So let me add a container around the chip widget, and I'm going to give some margin for the container. So let me set the margin to, let's say, 5 or 6. Okay, Now it has proper spacing. Okay. Now let's fix the truncated issue. For that, let's add a single child scroll view and make the row chips as a child of that. Okay, and give the scroll direction as horizontal. Okay, now it is scrolling horizontally, and that truncated issue is gone. But what if we want the chips that are not on the screen to be on the next line? So in that case, we will need the help of Wrap Widgets. So let's write a new function. For that, let me copy the row chips function and duplicate it and rename that to Wrap Widget and replace the row widget with the wrap. Okay, so let me add that to the UI. So you can see that the rest of the chips are in the new line now. Okay, so let me show some other useful properties of the Wrap widget. So I'm copying this chip4row function and renaming it to chip, and I'm going to replace all that in the Wrap widget. Okay, so once that is done, I'm going to remove the container which is around the chip widget, and let's go to the Wrap widget and add a property called spacing, which will add space between the chips, and run spacing will add space between the rows, so that you don't need to add an extra widget for spacing. Okay, here we had hard-coded the avatar text of each chip widget, right? So let's change that. So that will be label, get the first character and convert it to uppercase. Okay, so let's copy that and do it for the other function as well. Okay, so that's changed. Okay, so let me add one more divider. All right, and another divider just after the wrap widget. Okay, let's see how we can add these chips dynamically in the UI. Okay, for that I'm going to create a list of strings. So list string, I'm going to name it dynamic chips. So let's initialize that with health, food and nature. Okay, so let's write a function dynamic chips that's going to return a wrap widget with spacing 6, run spacing also 6, and children. So let's generate some widgets. So list of widget dot generate with dynamic chips dot length, and the generator with index, that's going to return a chip widget with label, which will be a text with value dynamic chips of index. Now if we go through the other properties of a normal chip widget, you can see that it has a property called on delete. So basically a normal chip widget will have a on delete callback. So we will see other type of chip widgets in a short while which has other different types of callbacks. So normally a chip widget will have a on delete callback. So let's see what happens when we add this callback to this chip widget. Okay, so on deleted, which is a function. So when that is executed, we will remove the object at that index from the dynamic chips array. Okay, and don't forget to call set state. All right, let's add it to the UI, refresh the app. Now you can see that the delete buttons are added to each chip, right? But if you want to customize the icon, you can do that as well. So let's do it now. I'm setting it to icons delete. So you can see that the icons got changed. All right, I'm setting it to default. So if you click on the button, the chips are getting deleted, correct? Here we are removing it from the list and refreshing the UI with the help of set state. Okay, now I'm going to introduce another type of chip called action chips. So that can be used to perform an action. So let's see how we can add an action chip to the UI. So return action chip with an elevation 6, padding of 10, and then avatar, just like we did for the default chip widget. Okay, the child is an icon. I'm going to set it to the call icon, and the label I'm setting it to call. Now let's check the properties. So you can see that we have an onTrust callback, but there is no onDelete callback because this is supposed to perform an action, right? So onTrust callback, so we can let's show a snack bar here. So I'm gonna use the key and call key dot current state dot show snack bar, and we need to pass in a new snack bar widget there. So new snack bar with content text calling. So I'm going to set the background color to white and a shape. I'm going to set it to a new stadium border with border side width of 1 and colors dot blue accent. Okay. Alright, now let's add this to the UI. Okay, now you can see that the call button is added and it is performing an action. Okay, so this chip cannot be deleted because it's an action chip and it is supposed to perform an action. Okay, but we have some padding issue here. The icon is getting cut off, so let's fix that. So I have set the padding to 10. I'm setting it to 2. Okay, so that's looking good now. Alright, so the next kind of chip is called input chip. The input chip is used to represent an entity or a person. Okay, so you might have seen this kind of chips when you are trying to compose a new email in your Gmail. Correct. So when you type emails, for each email an input chip is getting added to the UI. Correct. So let's create a similar kind of chip here. So that will be return input chip with a padding. So let's set the padding to 6 and avatar, a circle avatar, the background color of blue with a shade of 600 and a child which is a text. So I'm going to set it to JW and it needs a label. So I'm setting it to James Watson and set the selected property to true. Okay, so let's see what happens when we add this to the UI. Okay, you can see that by setting the selector to true, it got selected. If I set it to false, the color got changed. Alright, so now let's make it dynamic. So I'm creating a variable boolean is selected and setting it to false by default and change that to is selected, and we are going to set a selected color which is green. Okay, so we need the on selected callback. You can see that there are 3 callbacks here. You can use all these 3 callbacks for this widget. So let's use the on selected callback. So that's going to return true or false when it is selected. So I'm assigning the value to is selected. Okay, don't forget to call set state. So if I click now, you can see that it is getting selected and deselected. Correct. Now let's add the on delete property of this widget. Okay, so that will be on delete, and if I refresh the UI, you can see that the delete icon is being added to the input chip. Correct. So one more thing to note here is if I add the on press callback and if I refresh the UI again, you can see that there is an error. The reason for this is we cannot use the on selected and on press callback at the same time because that doesn't make any sense, right? So here the selected and selected color won't work with on pressed. Okay, so I'm gonna undo that. I'm setting the on selected here. So if you go inside the input chip class, you can see there are so many properties you can use, and you're free to use it and customize it any way you want. Okay. So the next type of chip we are going to see is called filter chips. So as the name says, you can use it to filter from a set of chips. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. So for that, I'm going to create a new class called company, which will have a constructor that will accept the company name. Okay, now I'm going to create a list of companies. So we need to declare a new variable, list of companies, and another list which is called filters. So we'll be filtering each company and adding and removing it from the filters array. Okay, so let's initialize the companies array with a list of companies. So companies array, new company, okay. Now we need to use this array, right? So let's create a new function. Okay, so that's going to return an iterable. So iterable widget get company widget sync. So these are called generator functions. I'll be making another tutorial on generator functions, but for now let's use it. So let's loop through the companies array and use yield. Yield will immediately return this widget and add it to that iterable widget. Okay, so with a padding 6 and child is a filter chip with an avatar, child text. Let's get the first character and make it uppercase, and the label will be the company name. Okay, now let's add the selected property. So that will be filters dot contains company dot name. So if it contains, then selected will become true. Okay, now the on selected callback. So when it is getting selected, then if it is true, then we will add that company name to the filters, and otherwise we will remove that company name from filters. So for that, use remove where and pass in the name. So if that name matches the company dot name, then it will be removed. Okay, and don't forget to call set state on this. So copy the whole thing and paste it inside the set state. Okay, now let's go to the build method and add a wrap widget with children will be company widgets dot to list. Okay, refresh the app. Now we have the list of filter chips. Okay, so let's show the selection in a text. So that will be filters dot join. So I'll be joining all the values with a comma. Okay, so when we select, it's added to the filters array and shown in the text widget. So when we unselect, it is removed from the array and updated in the text widget. Okay, the next widget is called choice chip. It helps the user to select an option from a list of choices. So let's see how we can do that. For that, I'm creating a list of string choices, and let's initialize the choices array, choice 1, choice 2, and choice 3. Okay, now we need to use it. So let's create a new function, widget choice chips. That's going to return list view. We are going to show the 3 choices in a list view. So item count will be choices dot length, and the item builder, it will have a context and the index Okay, now we need to return the choice chip widget here. So the label will be choices of index. Now we need to add the selector property. We can set the default selection index as 0. So default choice index. So I'm going to initialize it to 0. Okay, so selected is default choice index is equal to index. Okay, and selector color is colors.green, and when a choice is selected, then default index becomes, so when it is true, default index is index, otherwise it's null. Okay, let's set the background color as well. So colors.blue. Okay, and the label style is a new text style with the color white. Okay, so I'm adding an expanded widget around the list view. Okay, now let's add this to the UI. Okay, now you can see the list of choices. So when I select each choice, it will become green, and if I click again, it will become unselected, right? Because we had set it to null. So if I set it to 0, and when I unselect an option, the default 0th index will be selected. Okay, so that kind of logic is up to you. Alright, so we have seen all different types of chips, right? The choice chip, filter chips, action chips, and input chips, and the normal chips. So all serves different purposes. So you have to use each type of chip according to its purpose. Okay, so that's all in this video. If you liked the video and if you found it useful, please don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Hit the bell icon for notifications about my new videos. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye.